Welcome to listeners to Iowa Pulse, where we keep you on the record and in the know for this Sunday briefing, February 8th, 2026.
Agreed to be here.
So today we're doing an in-depth deep dive. We're looking at the legal landscape, school safety, and the weekend outlook. We're really going to try and analyze every detail from the sources, focusing on that human and legal impact right here in Iowa.
Yeah.
And I have to say, looking at the stack of reports we have, it feels like we're standing at a really strange intersection this week.
How do you mean?
Well, you've got the systems on one side, the school boards, police departments, the Supreme Court, the concept of estates.
The big institutions.
Exactly. And on the other side, you just have people, students, parents, a grieving husband. And this week, it just really highlights what happens when those big, rigid systems crash into messy human emotions.
That's a perfect way to frame it. The mission of this deep dive is to synthesize a really heavy news week. We've got school safety investigations, major court rulings on wrongful death suits, criminal sentencing.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. But we're also going to pivot to the practical pulse of daily life. Weather, gas prices. Because even when the courts are busy, you still have to fill up the tank.
You absolutely do. We've got reports from Atlantic, Fairfield, Council Bluffs, the Iowa Supreme Court down in Des Moines, and of course the National Weather Service. So, okay, let's unpack this. I think we have to start with the image that really dominated the end of the week. Friday, February 6th, in Atlantic.
The walkout at Atlantic High School.
Right. If you were just driving by, you saw students gathering outside, holding signs, chanting. I mean, it's a very visceral image. But to understand Friday, we have to rewind a bit. This didn't just pop up out of nowhere.
No, it didn't at all. Earlier in the week, Iowa Pulse reported that the Atlantic Police had kicked off an investigation into an incident involving a school staff member. That's the spark.
Okay.
But what's fascinating here, and what you see in so many of these institutional crises, is the gap between what the system does and what the people actually need.
Break that down for us. What do you mean?
Well, just look at the district's response. They acknowledged the investigation. They basically said, yes, police are looking into a staff member. But then what?
Radio silence.
Total radio silence. No specific detail.
Which, to be fair, is pretty standard procedure, isn't it? I mean,
Right.
Lawyers always tell organizations to zip it when there's an active investigation.
Precisely. It is the standard legal and administrative strategy. It's about limiting liability, protecting the integrity of the investigation. But then, think about the teenage brain. Think about the student body. To a lawyer, silence is prudence. To a student, silence can look a lot like hiding something.
And that creates a vacuum.
A total vacuum, exactly. And human nature hates a vacuum. We fill it with rumors, with anxiety, and, eventually with action. The reports say the students weren't just walking out over the specific incident itself.
Yeah.
They were chanting about school decision makers. They were holding signs about feeling safe and heard.
So that's the human impact part of our lens today. It really sounds like a breakdown of trust.
It is. The students are basically saying, we don't just want you to investigate. We want to feel like you're protecting us, not just the institution. It's a classic conflict between risk management and community reassurance.
So where does this stand right now? Have there been any charges?
As of this Sunday morning, we are kind of in a state of limbo. We know the police investigation is active. We know the district is aware. But we don't know the specifics of the incident or what the outcome's going to be. The sources are very careful not to speculate, and we should be too.
Okay, so Atlantic is in the investigation phase. Lots of questions, not many answers. But if we slide over to Fairfield, the situation is, it's much more developed. This isn't a walkout. This is an arrest.
Yes, and this provides a really stark contrast. In Fairfield, the legal machinery has moved from inquiry straight to enforcement.
We're talking about the arrest of Vannon Crabtree Jr., a 57-year-old from Richland. And I want to be clear about this because the list of charges is extensive. We're not just looking at some vague misconduct here.
No, the charge sheet is heavy.
We've got sexual exploitation by a school employee, grooming and lascivious acts with a minor.
Those are specific, very high-level charges. Grooming, in particular, implies a pattern of behavior, a psychological manipulation over time, not just a single event.
And what really jumped out at me was the speed of this. We so often hear about these investigations just dragging on for months, but looking at the timeline from the Fairfield Police Department, this moved incredibly fast.
It really did. The initial report came in on January 28th, 2026.
Okay, so barely 10 days ago.
Right. And it didn't come from the school administration. It came from a concerned parent.
A parent noticed something was wrong.
The report says that a parent suspected inappropriate contact between their juvenile daughter and this teacher via social media.
It's always a digital footprint, isn't it?
Almost always, yeah. And that is such a crucial takeaway for any parents listening. The quote-unquote scene of the crime isn't always a classroom or a car anymore. It's the DMs. It's Snapchat logs. That's where the evidence usually lives now.
So the parent flags it on the 28th. Then what happens?
Investigators moved with a lot of urgency. Between January 28th and February 5th, so basically 1 week, they gathered enough evidence to secure search warrants.
Wow.
They executed those warrants on Thursday the 5th, and the arrest was made.
That is rapid.
It really speaks to the quality of the evidence they must have found. You don't get a search warrant on just a hunch. You need probable cause.
And notice the collaboration here. Fairfield PD wasn't going it alone.
Right.
They had the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office and the Washington County Sheriff's Office involved.
It really shows that multi-agency task force approach.
Yeah.
It feels like when a minor is involved, the jurisdictional lines get blurry in a good way. Everyone just pitches in.
Exactly. Now, he's currently being held at the Jefferson County Correctional Facility on no bond.
No bond. That's significant. It is. It suggests the court views him as either a flight risk or, probably more likely, a danger to the community. But, and this is the legal impact lens we have to apply, we have to remind listeners that an arrest is not a conviction. Mr. Crabtree is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
Right. We're seeing the prosecution's opening move, not the final verdict. But speaking of final verdicts, let's pivot. We've looked at the start of the process investigations, arrests. I want to move over to Council Bluffs because this sort of closes the loop. We have a sentencing.
This is the case of Christopher Jr. Broderson in Potawatomi County.
And honestly, this is the part of the legal system that I think confuses people the most. It can feel like legal gymnastics. Broderson pled guilty to indecent contact with a child, which is an aggravated misdemeanor.
Correct.
But looking at the source material, there were other charges originally, right? Much bigger one.
Much bigger. Originally, he was facing second-degree sexual abuse, incest, and continuous sexual abuse of a child.
Those are felonies. Those are go away for a long time charges. And they were just dismissed.
They were dismissed as part of the plea agreement. And this is where that friction between the system and public perception happens again. To the public, it looks like charges just vanished into thin air.
Right.
To the legal system, it's a calculation. It's securing a guaranteed conviction on a lesser charge versus risking a full trial on higher charges where the proof might be harder to cement.
Okay, so let's look at the sentence he actually got. The court granted a deferred judgment. Can we just pause on that phrase? Because to the average person, deferred judgment sounds a lot like you're off the hook.
It is definitely not off the hook, but it is a very specific legal tool. Think of a deferred judgment like a sort of Damocles hanging over your head.
Okay.
The court is saying, we're accepting your guilty plea, but we are not going to enter the conviction on your permanent record.
Yet. That's the key word.
Right. It's conditional. The court deferred judgment for 2 years. During that time, he's on probation, supervised by the Department of Corrections. If he follows every single rule for 2 full years, the conviction doesn't stick in the same way. But if he slips up,
The sword falls.
the sword falls. The conviction is entered, and he can be sentenced to the full extent of the law.
But there are strings attached immediately, aren't there? I mean, he's not just walking free.
Oh, there are massive strings, and this is the part that protects the community. Even with the deferred judgment, the court ordered him to register as a sex offender for 10 years.
10 years on the registry.
Yes, that's a public database that alerts neighbors, that restricts where he can live and work.
And the sources mention a no contact order.
Correct. He's prohibited from having any contact with the victims or their family for 5 years. Plus, he has to undergo residential treatment as determined by the DOC. So, while he isn't sitting in a prison cell right now, he is very much in the system. He's being watched, monitored, and treated.
That's a really crucial distinction. Justice here isn't about warehousing him in a cell. It's about long-term surveillance and restriction.
Precisely. It's a trade-off.
Yeah.
The plea deal avoids the trauma of a trial for the victims, and the sentence ensures a decade of monitoring for the perpetrator.
Okay, let's take a breath and shift gears. We've been deep in criminal law police, arrests, sentencing, but there was a major ruling from the Iowa Supreme Court on Friday about a civil case. And this one is a heartbreaker, but it's also a fascinating lesson in how the law actually works.
This is the Tornell case out of Polk County. And you're right, it touches on something that could affect, well, literally anyone listening.
So here's the story. Preston Tornell lost his wife, Cara, back in December of 2021. She died just a day after being treated at Mercy On in West Des Moines.
Just a tragedy by any measure.
It is. So Preston, the husband, files a wrongful death lawsuit. He believes there was medical negligence. But here is the snag share. Preston isn't a lawyer. He tried to represent the estate himself. He filed the paperwork pro se.
Pro se just means for oneself, representing yourself.
Right. And the lower court looked at that and said, nope, you can't do that. And they dismissed the case entirely. They basically said because he wasn't a lawyer, the lawsuit was invalid from the very start.
And technically, and I know this is going to sound harsh, the lower court was right about that first part. In Iowa, a non-lawyer cannot represent an estate in court.
But why? If I can represent myself in traffic court or even a criminal trial, why can't I represent my wife's estate?
Because legally, an estate is not you. It's a separate legal entity. Think of an estate like a small corporation. Even if you're the CEO, you can't go into court and represent the corporation unless you are a licensed attorney.
Why that distinction, though?
Because an estate involves other people. It involves potential heirs, children, creditors who are owed money, maybe the hospital itself. If you, as a non-lawyer, mess up the case because you don't know the rules of evidence, you aren't just hurting yourself. You're hurting the rights of everyone else connected to that estate. The court is trying to protect those, invisible third parties from incompetence.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense when you explain it that way. It's about protecting the asset, not just blocking the husband. But the Supreme Court stepped in this week and said the lower court went too far.
Exactly. The Supreme Court said, yes, the rule is valid. He needs a lawyer. But, and this is the big but, you have to give him a chance to fix it.
They called it an abuse of discretion, right?
They did. They said dismissing the case immediately as a legal nullity was way too harsh. It closed the courthouse doors on a grieving family over a simple procedural error.
So what's the fix? What happens now?
The Supreme Court reversed the dismissal. They sent it back to Polk County and ordered that Tornell be given a reasonable amount of time, at least 30 days, to go out and hire a licensed attorney to take over the case.
That seems like a victory for common sense.
It's a massive victory for what we call access to justice. The court is acknowledging that the legal system is a maze, and your regular person hits a dead end. You don't just kick them out of the maze, you show them where the turn is. You give them a chance to correct the mistake.
So it prioritizes fairness over a rigid technicality.
Ideally, yes. It ensures that the merits of the case, whether there was actually malpractice, get to be heard, rather than the case just dying because the paperwork was signed by the wrong person.
That is a really important precedent. It tells us that the courts are scary, but they aren't completely heartless.
Well said.
Okay, we have covered a lot of heavy ground today. Investigations, sex crimes, wrongful death suits. I think we need to exhale. Let's shift gears to the pulse, the lifestyle and logistics that actually affect our listeners Sunday afternoon.
Please. A very welcome change in pace.
First up, I just want to give a quick nod to the business side of things. We saw a mention in the sources of the Iowa Institute for Health Literacy, which is run by Joe Klein.
Which fits our theme today perfectly, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, we've been talking about understanding complex legal systems, how confusing they are. The Institute for Health Literacy is doing the exact same thing for the medical world. They help people understand diagnoses, insurance, treatment plans.
Oh, that is a great connection.
It is. Whether it's a court docket or a medical chart, if you don't speak the language, you're pretty much powerless. Making complex information accessible is it's crucial.
Absolutely. Now, for the drivers out there, if you're filling up the tank for the week ahead, you're looking at a state average of 2.574 cents per gallon.
257. Honestly, not too painful historically speaking.
No, I will take it. And for those who commute, keep an eye out for the new traffic alerts page updates that are coming to the source we use. They're promising cleaner, faster info. But looking at the roads today, Sunday the 8th, what are we driving into?
We are driving into what I would call a tale of two Iowas.
I was looking at the National Weather Service data, and it really is split right down the middle, isn't it?
It is. If you are in the West Sioux City, Council Bluffs, you are getting a total spring tease.
I saw that. Highs in the 50s.
52 in Sioux City, 56 in Council Bluffs. I mean, that is roll the windows down weather for February. That's wash the car in the driveway weather.
But if you are in the east,
a slightly different story. Cedar Rapids, Davenport, you're kind of stuck in the clouds a bit more. Highs are only near 39.
oof, that's a jacket day.
Definitely. Still not freezing, still mild for February, but definitely cooler than your neighbors to the west.
And right here in central Iowa, Des Moines is basically just splitting the difference.
High near 46. Mostly sunny. Honestly, for a Sunday in February, it's a gift. It's a very pleasant day to be out and about.
And the best news of all?
No active alerts, no blizzards, no ice storms, no fog advisories. Just a calm end to a really turbulent week.
So what does this all mean when we step back and look at the whole picture?
It's a juxtaposition, isn't it? The news cycle we just analyzed was chaotic and distressing. The Atlantic walkout and the Fairfield arrest are these stark reminders of the vulnerabilities in our schools. The Council Bluffs sentencing reminds us of the long tail of justice.
It feels heavy.
It is heavy. But then you have the Supreme Court stepping in to ensure fairness for Mr. Tornell. And you have the weather just giving us a literal break from it all.
It highlights the importance of staying informed. If you didn't know about the Supreme Court ruling, you might think a procedural mistake is the end of the road. If you didn't know about the sex offender registry details, you might think a deferred judgment means zero consequences.
Exactly. Knowledge reduces the anxiety of the unknown. And that is why we do this.
And before we go, I do want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Go for it.
We talked about the Tornell case, the husband who tried to represent his wife's estate. It just makes you realize how the legal system draws this hard line between you as an individual and you as a representative.
The legal fiction of the estate, as they call it.
Right. It's an imaginary line, but it has very real power. It almost cost a family their day in court just because they didn't see that line. And it just raises the question, how many other invisible lines exist in our system that we don't see until we trip over them?
That is a provocative thought. The law is a minefield of those invisible lines, and usually you don't find them until it's too late.
Indeed. Well, thank you for tuning in to Iowa Pulse. New briefings are available regularly to keep you informed.
Stay safe, Iowa.